The harsh Wyoming wind sliced through the town of Dust Devil Creek with a bitter edge, cold enough to make a seasoned rancher flinch. Owen Croft strode down the deserted street, his pack horse trailing obediently behind him as snow swirled across the frozen ground like fine white powder. For 15 years, he had carved out a life on his remote ranch, far from the company of men, far from the memories of a past that nearly saw him swing from a rope for a crime he didn't commit. Towns were the last place on earth he ever wanted to be, but the biting reality of winter paid no mind to a man's preferences. He needed supplies if he was going to survive until the spring thaw. As he walked, the few people braving the cold stared. Whispers followed him like his own shadow. "That's Croft," a voice hissed from a sheltered porch, the one with the ranch out past Shadow Canyon. "They say he killed a lawman." Owen's jaw tightened, his gaze fixed forward. He'd learned a long time ago that in the unforgiving West, a rumor could travel faster and hit harder than a bullet. The truth was a currency few cared to trade in. He was about to step into Thompson's Mercantile when a flicker of movement in the adjacent alley caught his eye. It was a quick, furtive motion, almost lost in the swirling snow. Owen's hand instinctively drifted towards the pistol holstered at his hip before he registered the source. It wasn't a threat, but a girl, a young Chinese woman, perhaps 20 at most, desperately sifting through a heap of trash for something to eat. She moved with the nervous energy of a cornered animal. Her traditional cheongsam was thin and offered little protection against the relentless cold, her fingers a raw, cracked red. Snowflakes clung to her dark hair as she pulled a frozen, discarded piece of bread from the pile, clutching it as if it were a solid gold nugget. Owen found himself moving closer, though he couldn't say why. Perhaps it was the defiant set of her shoulders, poised to flee at a moment's notice. Perhaps it was the gnawing memory of his own past hunger. Or maybe it was something in her dark, almond-shaped eyes that reminded him of a younger, more desperate version of himself, frightened, but too proud to ever ask for help. "Miss," he said, his voice a low rumble. She spun around, her back hitting the cold brick wall, her eyes sharp and wary. She said nothing, her gaze unwavering, a wall of mistrust between them. Owen reached into his coat, not for his weapon, but for the worn leather pouch heavy with gold dust, the result of a long and profitable cattle drive, enough to see him through the winter. He hadn't planned his words, and they came out rougher than he intended. "Can I buy you?" Her expression shifted in an instant, from shock to a flare of anger, and then settled into a kind of dark, bitter humor. She lifted her chin, her gaze locking with his. "You can't afford my freedom." The word struck Owen with the force of a physical blow. That wasn't what he had meant. He wasn't trying to purchase her, to own her. He was simply trying to offer help. But in that moment, he understood what she had heard, the same crude proposition too many men had likely thrown her way. He slowly returned the pouch to his coat. "I meant no disrespect," he said, his tone softening. "There's a diner down the street, O'Malley's. They serve a hot stew for 15 cents. It's a good meal, and it's warm inside. I thought you might have a use for it." She stared at him, her eyes searching his face, trying to divine the truth hidden beneath his weathered exterior. "Why?" she asked, her voice quiet but firm. "Because I know what it is to be hungry," he answered honestly. "And I know what it is to be on the run." For a fleeting moment, the hardness in her eyes softened. She wasn't convinced, but perhaps she saw a flicker of understanding. "The men who are looking for me are not the kind to give up," she said, a warning in her voice. "Neither are the blizzards in these parts," Owen replied. "And I'm still here." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "Almost." They walked to O'Malley's diner together, though she stayed close to the buildings, her eyes scanning the street. Inside, Owen chose a corner table, one that gave them a clear view of the door. She sat stiffly, a coiled spring of tension, as if expecting danger to burst in at any second. "My Lynn," she said finally, breaking the silence. "Owen Croft," he replied. "I know who you are," she said. "They say you killed a lawman." "They say a lot of things," Owen answered, his voice even. "Most of them are wrong." The stew arrived, thick and steaming, filled with meat and vegetables. My Lin tried to eat slowly, to maintain her composure, but every spoonful she took was a testament to her starvation. Owen looked away, giving her the dignity of privacy, and sipped his coffee. Just then, the diner door swung open, letting in a blast of frigid air. 3 men stepped inside, their boots heavy on the wooden floor, their faces colder than the wind they'd left behind. The man in the lead had a prominent scar that twisted his mouth into a permanent sneer. His pale, cold eyes swept the room and landed on My Lin. She froze, the spoon trembling in her hand. Well, the scarred man drawled. Miss Lin. You've led us on quite a chase. I don't know you, My Lin said, her voice barely a whisper, her shaking hands betraying her fear. You knew Mr. Chen, the man retorted. And you took some papers from him. Papers he never should have had. My Lin's spoon clattered onto the table. Before she could respond, Owen spoke, his voice calm but carrying an unmistakable weight. Let the lady finish her meal in peace. The scarred man's glare shifted to Owen. This ain't your concern, rancher. It is now, Owen replied, his hand resting casually near the butt of his pistol. Is that a threat? The man sneered. No, Owen said, his eyes like chips of ice. It's a statement of fact. You boys decide to draw your guns in here, someone's going to die. It might be you. The entire diner seemed to hold its breath. The tension was a palpable thing, thick and heavy in the air. Finally, the scarred man let out a short, harsh laugh. This isn't over. It usually ain't, Owen agreed. They watched the men leave, but Owen knew they wouldn't go far. They would be waiting outside. We need to move, he said quietly to My Lin. Through the kitchen, out the back. Where would we go? She asked, her voice laced with despair. I have a ranch, up past Shadow Canyon. It's warm, it's safe, and it's damn hard to find. And the price, she whispered, her pride still intact. No price, Owen said gently. Just an offer. My Lin looked towards the front window, where danger lurked, then back at Owen. She gave a single, decisive nod. They slipped out the back just as the snow began to fall in earnest, the thick flakes already working to cover their tracks. My Lin climbed onto his pack horse, and they rode towards the dark, looming silhouette of the mountains. Behind them, carried on the wind, they could hear the faint sound of men mounting their own horses. They were being followed, and the storm was closing in. The snow fell in a thick, blinding curtain as Owen guided his horse up the treacherous mountain path. The storm felt like a physical force, trying to push them back down into the valley and into the hands of their pursuers. My Lin held on tight, her thin clothing no match for the biting cold. Owen could feel her shivering against him. We're close, he shouted over the howling wind, though the words were nearly snatched away. My Lin didn't reply, conserving what little energy she had left. Smart girl. The higher they climbed, the thinner and sharper the air became. But Owen's horse was sure-footed, knowing this terrain by heart, pushing through snow that was nearly chest-deep. After what felt like an eternity, the trees thinned, and the dark outline of Owen's cabin materialized against the white landscape. Smoke curled from the chimney, a welcome sight. A wave of relief washed over him. For 15 years, this small cabin had been his sanctuary. He prayed it would become hers as well. Inside, My Lin huddled by the fire Owen quickly built, rubbing her hands together to restore feeling. Her cheeks were flushed from the cold. She slowly took in her surroundings, the sturdy, hand-carved table, the rifles mounted on the wall, the shelves heavily laden with preserved food. It's beautiful, she whispered, her voice filled with awe. It's shelter, Owen said, though her words had warmed something inside him he wasn't ready to name. Once she had warmed through, Owen handed her a steaming mug of pine needle tea. My Lin drank it slowly, her eyes half closed. For the first time since he had met her, she didn't look like she was ready to bolt. You said the men after you won't give up, Owen said, breaking the comfortable silence. Who are they? My Lin set her mug down and retrieved a leather-bound folder from her small satchel. I took these, she said, her voice heavy. From the man I worked for. What kind of papers? Owen asked. The kind that men kill for. He opened the folder. Inside were survey maps, land deeds, and correspondence. It was a collection of records, 2 sets of documents for each property, one real, one forged. Owen recognized the names of several local ranchers, honest men he'd had dealings with over the years. You're saying these men stole land? He asked, a hard edge to his voice. More than land, My Lin said. They stole mining claims, water rights. Entire futures. My employer, Mr. Chen, he discovered the truth. They made it look like he fell down a flight of stairs. A slow, hot anger began to build in Owen's chest. And they blamed you. They were going to kill me too, to ensure my silence. I ran, but there's no safe town for a Chinese girl alone. Word spreads she met his gaze, her own clear and steady. Then you showed up. Before Owen could reply, a flicker of movement outside the window caught his eye, a shadow detaching itself from the snow-laden trees. He pressed a finger to his lips, and My Lin instantly froze. Owen moved silently to a small firing slit he had carved into the cabin wall. Through it, he saw them, 3 riders, moving stealthily through the trees, their rifles at the ready. They found us, he whispered. My Lin's breath hitched. What do we do? We stay quiet, Owen said, his voice a low growl. They're just the scouts. The rest of them won't be far behind. The scouts circled the cabin, their movements precise and professional. They communicated with hand signals, not words. Professionals, Owen muttered. These aren't just common thugs. Will they attack tonight? My Lin asked, her voice trembling slightly. No. They'll wait for reinforcements. They'll want overwhelming numbers. For the remainder of the day, Owen and My Lin worked to fortify the cabin. They barricaded the door with logs, filled every available bucket with water in case of fire, and strategically placed ammunition within easy reach. Owen showed her the cabin's hidden defenses, the escape tunnel in the root cellar, the reinforced panels, the best places to shoot from. As they worked, My Lin proved to be quick-witted and steady-handed. She didn't complain or falter, learning the cabin's layout faster than Owen could have anticipated. You've handled a gun before, Owen observed. My father taught me how to shoot, My Lin replied. He said a woman on her own in this country must know how to protect herself. He was a smart man, Owen said. As night fell, an eerie silence descended upon the mountains. Even the wind seemed to be holding its breath. Owen and My Lin stood watch in shifts. She took the back window, a shotgun resting across her lap, while Owen watched the front, his eyes scanning the dark tree line. Hours crawled by. Finally, Owen broke the silence. Tell me what happens if those papers don't get to the right people. My Lin's shoulders slumped. Then nothing changes. Families will lose their ranches, honest people will be ruined, and men like Colonel Finch will continue to get richer and more powerful. Finch, Owen repeated, the name tasting like poison. He's the man behind it all, My Lin confirmed. A militia colonel now. He used to be a surveyor. He's the one who created the forged documents that destroyed my family back in California. A cold rage, familiar and sharp, coiled in Owen's gut. He's the one leading them. He wants me dead, My Lin said, her voice quiet but firm. And he wants those papers destroyed. Owen nodded slowly. Then we won't let him have either. The night wore on. Around midnight, a faint sound carried on the wind, a low whistle. Owen stiffened. They're here, he said. My Lin moved to his side. How many? More than we can handle in a straight fight, Owen admitted. They won't attack just yet. They're surrounding us, waiting for dawn. My Lin took a deep breath. Owen, if you want to leave, I won't blame you. This isn't your fight. He turned to face her, his gaze unwavering. I'm not leaving you. The undisguised shock on her face told him that no one had ever said those words to her before. Before she could respond, the sharp crack of a rifle shot echoed through the night. It was followed by another. A moment later, torches flared to life among the trees. The siege had begun. Owen chambered a round in his rifle and glanced at Mai Lin. "You ready?" She nodded, her expression resolute. "Ready." Outside, men began shouting as they took their positions around the cabin. Owen stepped up to the firing slit, his shoulders squared. "Then let's make them wish they never came." The first grey light of dawn was just beginning to touch the snow-covered peaks when the main assault began. Owen felt it before he heard it, a subtle shift in the atmosphere, a heavy, expectant silence. Then, a single, commanding voice cut through the frigid morning air. "Owen Croft! Mai Lin! You are surrounded!" Mai Lin's breath caught in her throat. "It's him!" Colonel Alastair Finch stepped out from behind the cover of the trees. He was dressed in a pristine uniform, his boots polished to a high shine, as if he were on a parade ground rather than leading an attack on a remote mountain cabin. More than a dozen men fanned out behind him, their rifles raised. Owen brought his own rifle up but held his fire. "Send out the girl and the papers," Finch yelled, his voice echoing in the still morning air. "Do that, and I give you my word you can walk away from this." Mai Lin shook her head, her eyes wide with fear. "He's lying. He'll kill us both." Owen didn't bother responding to Finch. He answered her instead. "We're not surrendering. Not ever." A volley of gunshots erupted, the bullets thudding into the log walls of the cabin, sending splinters flying. Owen returned fire, his shot finding its mark, dropping a man who was attempting to rush the cabin from the left. Mai Lin moved to a firing panel at the back, her shots measured and precise. Reloading, she called out. "Covering!" Owen yelled back, firing a few shots towards her side to keep their attackers at bay. The small cabin shuddered under the relentless barrage of bullets. Soon, smoke began to seep through the gaps between the logs. "They're trying to burn us out," Mai Lin said, her voice tight with alarm. Owen grabbed a bucket of water and doused the smoking wall. "It means they're getting desperate. It means we're hurting them." The gunfire intensified. The cabin was well built, but Owen knew that no fortress could withstand a determined siege indefinitely. A torch arced through the air, landing on the roof with a soft thud. Mai Lin started for another bucket of water, but Owen grabbed her arm. "Stay back. It's a trick to draw you out." Another torch flew past the window, the smell of burning pitch filling the small space. Mai Lin coughed, her eyes stinging from the smoke. "Owen, if the roof catches." "It's not going to," he said, kicking open a trap door in the floor. "Root cellar. We can fight from there." They descended into the cramped, dark space just as the smoke above them grew thick and suffocating. Owen moved to a hidden firing slit near ground level, which gave him a clear shot at the feet and legs of anyone who got too close. Mai Lin took up a position at another. She fired first, and a pained grunt from outside told her she had hit her target. Their attackers were growing impatient. Orders were shouted, and the sound of boots crunching in the snow grew louder. "They're rushing the cabin!" Owen yelled. He fired rapidly, dropping one man, while Mai Lin took down another. But still, they came. Then, just as suddenly as it began, everything stopped. A new sound filled the valley, the thunder of approaching horses, and not from Finch's men. A fierce, ululating cry echoed off the canyon walls. Mai Lin's eyes widened. "Who is that?" "Friends," Owen said, a wave of profound relief washing over him. "Old friends." Through the swirling smoke, Owen could see riders pouring into the clearing from the north, a band of native warriors, men Owen had aided years ago. They were led by Black Eagle, his powerful voice rising above the chaos. Finch's men turned, their expressions a mixture of confusion and panic. They were not prepared for a fight on two fronts. "Now!" Owen shouted. He kicked open the cellar's emergency exit, grabbed Mai Lin's hand, and pulled her out into the blinding snow. They ran low, using the pandemonium as cover. Men were scrambling everywhere, some firing wildly at the new arrivals, others diving for cover. One of Finch's men saw My Lin and raised his rifle. Owen didn't hesitate, he fired from the hip, and the man crumpled to the ground. "Come on," he yelled. They reached the tree line just as a rider galloped past. "Croft!" Black Eagle shouted. "This way!" Owen swung My Lin up onto the horse and then climbed on behind her. Black Eagle seized the reins, kicked his heels into the horse's flanks, and they bolted up a narrow, hidden trail. Bullets whizzed past them, but Black Eagle's warriors returned fire, providing covering fire for their retreat. Within minutes, the cabin and the firefight were far below, swallowed by the smoke and confusion. Hours later, they reached a hidden ridge, safe for the moment. My Lin slid off the horse, her legs trembling so badly she nearly collapsed. Owen caught her, his hand steady on her arms. "Are you all right?" he asked. Her breath came in ragged clouds in the cold air. "You saved me." "You saved yourself," he corrected her. "I just provided a distraction." She looked back at the plume of smoke rising in the distance. "You're home." Owen followed her gaze. The cabin that had been his refuge for 15 years was now a funeral pyre. He let out a long, slow breath. Cabins can be rebuilt. Lives can't. My Lin stepped closer and placed a hand on his chest. "I'm so sorry, Owen." He covered her hand with his own. "It was worth it." "You are worth it." Her eyes, when they met his, were filled with a warmth and a light that he hadn't seen in anyone's for a long, long time. "Where do we go now?" she whispered. "Somewhere safe," Owen said. "Then we find a lawman who's not on Finch's payroll. Someone who can use those papers to bring him down for good." My Lin nodded. "I'll stand with you." A faint smile touched Owen's lips. "I wasn't planning on standing without you." Below them, Black Eagle and his warriors were regrouping, ready to guide them through mountain passes no militia could ever hope to find. My Lin leaned her head against Owen's shoulder. For the first time since he'd found her in that alley in Dust Devil Creek, she wasn't running from something. She was moving toward something. The snow began to fall again, soft and silent, as if the mountains themselves were offering a blessing. Owen wrapped an arm around her, pulling her close. "You told me I couldn't afford your freedom," he murmured. "And I was right," My Lin said, a small smile playing on her lips as she looked up at him. "But you earned something better." "What's that?" "My trust." Owen looked out over the vast, wild Wyoming landscape, a land scarred by violence but still breathtakingly beautiful. He felt something shift deep inside him, something that had been locked away for a very long time. Maybe he didn't have to be a lone rancher anymore. Maybe he never really did. "Then let's go," he said softly. "We've got a future to fight for." Together, they turned and walked down the ridge, ready for whatever came next.